often when it comes to showcasing women or showcasing our lives, it's more women who are high profile, who've kind of made it, that we just hear about over and over. And often they might not even be women who, who actually are particularly extraordinary, other than they have a talent to show themselves to the world. So mine is more about a rather in-depth look and exploration with women into what is extraordinary about us. And of course, we're all extraordinary women. And I know Angelica prompted me a while back and said to me, well, it's actually extraordinary women, extraordinary lives. And that's absolutely true. So I couldn't decide whether to call it ordinary woman, extraordinary lives, or extraordinary woman, ordinary lives, but it's both. And the other thing is that I've had the response from quite a few women around, well, what me, extraordinary, really, I feel a little bit sort of honored and daunted at the same time that's the way I'm being held in this context. And I say, well, extraordinary isn't about being perfect. And this is, again, is often the woman that we see showcased in big lights and all of that. Appear to be perfect, but it's about really bringing our imperfections, and the more we can accept that we are imperfect in a certain way, and accept that we are to both personality and spirit, and that we, unless we're completely enlightened, that we carry aspects of both of those. So that's just a bit of introduction into this. So I'm going to start by reading the poem, just to help center us. It's called Homecoming, and it's a poem written by a woman who's actually a good friend of mine in New Zealand, who has, over the last few years, discovered herself as a poet. And often I found her poems very pertinent to a lot of the work that I do. So if you just want to relax and take a couple of deep breaths, I'll go ahead and read the poem on homecoming. Homecoming. After a long time unmoored, living alongside rather than in yourself, on seeing this and feeling suddenly homesick for something you didn't know existed. Peace. You might long to rush at yourself, dive headlong into the safety of home, and wonder why you keep missing. Wonder why you and your life keep floating away from each other. Knowing that the anchor was thrown too far from the boat all that time ago, reunion can't come soon enough. Still, it takes time to reacquaint, time to trust the tide that was always trying to take you home, and that will pick you up and return you yet. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Seya and Rebecca. All of you women have in some ways been pivotal in some form of circle or movement or women's group that I've created. Seya and Rebecca, you've both also been part of. Rebecca and I are now into our third year of facilitating a more type of spiritual women's circle that we've been facilitating for now over 2 years, once a month. And Seya and Angelica are part of a group that I started at the beginning of last year. So at the time that lockdown it started. So I don't always know the women that are part of these conversations, but it just so happens that you all hold a very special place in my heart. So, and in my journey today. So it's really special. And so with that, I'm just going to invite maybe Seya, you could start just by telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, because we're not all South African here. I know you know a few of us. And also tell us something about yourself that we might like to know.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, Guiomar. Also, thank you for the invite. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. My name is Seya Sefako, and I'm 35 years old, two boys, and a wife. I live in Morningside, Johannesburg, and I run a business, a beauty business. Amongst other things, I'm also a student. I'm doing a business degree. And what else is interesting about me? I love the outdoors. I love keeping fit. Um, I love doing things that challenge me. Um, and that has been very evident in the last couple of years. I think the last 2 years, I've really pushed myself. Because normally I wouldn't even do this. I wouldn't even take something like this on because it is kind of out of my comfort zone. So I'm loving the new me. So yeah, I'm very excited about this conversation as well. I'm looking forward to learn. I always tell my kids you must have a teachable spirit. So I'm looking forward to learn something and also maybe give something as well. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sia. And I love that you mention, your courage in that, because it's something also, to come to these conversations also requires courage. I know it can be quite intimidating doing something new, particularly with people that you don't know. But thank you for joining us today. Rebecca, you'll have to unmute yourself, but yeah, could you also just let us know but where you're from and something about yourself?
Sure. Well, I will say right off the bat, Sia, I love reciprocity. I always feel that anytime there's something that we give and share, that it's received and reciprocated is just a beautiful experience. And I've certainly had that with Guiomar since we first met over the phone a few years ago in that Akashic record class that we did together. I chuckle at the question about where I'm from because I've been living in Los Angeles for 32 years. I came here for a 10-day visit in 1989. And the people that I came to visit invited me to come back, and here I've been, married a Southern California fellow. But I'm originally from North Dakota. Um, so to me, this is an indication really of I'm surrounded by indigenous peoples. I'm surrounded by land and the earth and the sky and the seasons and just people who are very warm and loving toward each other. That's what I grew up with. And sometimes I feel to be transplanted in Los Angeles wasn't something that I chose. But consciousness here is far wider and receptive than it is in North Dakota. So I feel like I'm a bit of a balance between who I was growing up for 25 years and who I am now at 57. My father was a minister, but a wide vision one who accepted people for who they are and their relationship with spirit, whatever that means to them. And that is incorporated in the work that I do today as an energy healer. I call my work soul healing because even though the soul does not need any kind of repair or healing, the partnership of the soul through healing is, I feel, a beautiful place to come. The human expression. And so I weave many different modalities together, like I call it a stained glass window where many lifetimes I trained and mastered in many different modalities, and I'm weaving them together in this lifetime through sound and crystals and color and kinesiology, muscle testing, all kinds of different DNA. I love it. And on the earth plane, I am married. I've got 2 adult children, a daughter who's getting married in a year. So again, it's this balance that I feel that I weave together of having this conscious awareness and living this just I'm me, a normal life. I I feel like that's a way to be a light in a world of transformation. There you have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Rebecca. Rebecca, is such an inspiration in my life, and such a beautiful guiding light as well. And I just love all the work she does. It's quite different from what I do, and I love that we sort of have passions in different modalities. And I think it just exemplifies sort of how we're all unique, and we have different blends of different modalities that we're passionate about. But thank you particularly for joining us from all the way across in the US. It's just such a delight to have you here with us.
My joy. I'm happy to be here.
And so I'll move on now to introduce Angelica, who's had to be quite quiet until this moment. Angelica, as I said a little earlier, I met just over a year ago in a women's circle that I created, and she's been quite an inspiration to me. To give you a bit of background around Angelica, but she'll also, be introducing herself a bit further. Is that Angelica lives part between Sweden and South Africa at the moment, and has a very interesting and diverse history where she's not belonged anywhere and belonged everywhere, has lived in most countries of the world, and also is very accomplished, highly accomplished in the corporate world. And Angelica, I know I've asked you to send me your CV twice, and you won't believe that on both occasions I haven't been able to find it or to access it. So I'm trusting that I'm supposed to introduce you as I know you. And
absolutely no problem.
So just to say, Angelica has led big international firms, and is, from what, again, this is purely from my understanding, but is involved at high level in the mining world, more on a consultancy basis nowadays than in the being part of the actual business itself. And it holds a very interesting, it's very interesting. South Africa is a very big mining country, and Angelica straddles that world also, which is these conversations being with women is very much a masculine led and oriented world. And so I'm sure Angelica brings a phenomenal energy to that space, knowing who she is. And I know, Angelica, you've made mention before that you also facilitate some conversations, not unlike this perhaps, with groups of men, which is super interesting as well. And so I invited Angelica today because, related to our coming home theme, I've been super curious about what home means to Angelica. With her history, I've heard a bit of the information, but I'm sure she'll share more with us now, where she finds home. So Angelica, perhaps you just want to kick off by speaking about what's in your heart, in your space at the moment around that.
Absolutely. But first of all, I must thank you, Guiomar, because it's a lovely occasion. I so much enjoy these sessions, and meeting you, Rebecca, and reconnecting with you, Seya. It's so lovely. And after this beautiful intro by Guiomar, you must really wonder who I am. This strange person who's traveled the world and working only with men in the mining field. And what homecoming is for me, or where home is for me. And when we started our conversations, Guiomar and I, about this, I said that, well, first of all, I've got two parents of two different nationalities. So I have a Swedish mother and a Polish father, and I was raised in Switzerland. So when people are asking me, what nationality are you? I say I travel on a Swedish passport. Because that is rather unknown what nationality I really am, where my heart really is. But I will come to that a little bit later on. As you understand from Guiomar, my career has played a big role. Actually, my professional life has played a big role in my life. It's no question about it. And it became, at one point in time, it really became a lifestyle. And I'm happy that that chapter of my life is now over, that work is not so overwhelmingly controlling my life. My professional life actually played a big role. I'm happy that that chapter in my life was over, but my profession has taken me to all countries in the world, almost. I think there are one or two where I haven't been working or haven't been for work. And I've also taken the decision to live in some of the countries where I've been working. I think it's because I like adventures. I love adventures, not only like, I love adventures. And I really wanted to previously to take the opportunity and go somewhere exciting. And I graduated. I went to school and I graduated in Switzerland. I went for my postgraduate degree in Sweden, since my mother was Swedish. And I took on my first assignment, and they sent me, I so badly wanted to be sent to China, but they sent me to Russia. So I actually lived for 4 years in Moscow, which was an adventure of no way. And I think actually I left a piece of my heart in Russia. Russia collapsed, so I couldn't work in Russia. And then actually I became a mother, which was also a very important step in my life, to a son that was born more than 10 weeks premature, 12 weeks premature. So a miracle child. And he was small and he was sick. And he was born in Sweden, where they've got extremely good health care. But I was too much of an adventurous to stay in Sweden. So 23 years ago, I arrived in South Africa with a premature child and 2 suitcases, a bit like you, Rebecca. I thought I would stay for 2 years and have a great adventure. But I'm still actually having one foot in South Africa. So 23 years later, I'm still actually there. Even though we took the decision after some years in South Africa to go back to Sweden. And from Sweden, we went to Australia. And from Australia, we went back to South Africa. And since then, I've been commuting more or less. I'm taking on assignments in where they are in the world. So that means that now I actually have a Swedish assignment. So right now I'm sitting in Stockholm, Sweden. But that means that where have I created my home? If we're coming back to that, where have I felt at home? And is home a place, or is home within yourself? These are questions that I've been asking myself a lot through life. And I think I've come to actually feel like home is within myself. It's where I can find my community, where I can find the people that I like and the people that I love, the people where I also feel a sense of belonging. That is also an extremely important thing for us, to feel a sense of belonging, to feel heard and seen and interact. And I think if we're looking at places, the place where I feel actually most heard and seen is South Africa. And that is also the reason for me still being there after 23 years. I still have my house in South Africa, so I actually have a physical place also where my heart is. But it has been a journey. It has been a journey traveling to all these places, living in all these places, because when you come to a new place, you also have to start from the beginning. Your heart has to settle, really to see, well, where do I find my community? Where do I find new friends? And you have to be brave and go out there, because from the beginning, you know no one. You cannot even find the grocery store where you're supposed to go and buy your milk. So you really are starting from the beginning. When you've done it so many times, as I've done it, you know, actually it's a process, you know how to do it. But the first time, it's rather scary to go out there. And
Angelica, I love what you're saying around that, because scary is a big thing.
Yeah.
And being alone is a big thing. Finding yourself alone. And there's something around, what you're saying, that it's a process that you from what I've understood, you've found that the more you've moved and the more you've found that you know how to do this thing of being alone and of finding home, and starting with home being centered in yourself. So you mentioned the words, and I've heard you say them before, that being heard and belonging and also building bridges are really important to you. Did you want to say something? Were you going
indeed,
to say something?
I wanted to say that, yes, I think that is part of the human spirit to mine, and I think all of us, we need to feel that sense of belonging. We need to feel that sense of, this is where I belong, at least for now. This is where I am. This is actually where I want to be, at least for now. And then actually accept and go from there.
And so what I love about your journey and your story, at least what I know of it, because there's so many layers to it that I'm sure we'll have to have more conversations, to unpack that in more depth. There's so many interesting things. But what I love is that in many ways, that spirit of adventure that you have is the important thing. And in many ways, your journey while you physically moved is also a metaphoric journey and an encouragement to women to take the bold move, to do courageous things. Where it's funny, but just reflecting on or preparing for this conversation today, the one word that's come up for me has been aloneness. And I know as well, on a level, that whilst you've got your beloved son, who you're incredibly close to, I think you've made mention that you don't actually have that much family that you're connected to in the world. I don't know if it's that you don't have that much family, or that also that you're just not that connected to the family that you have.
I don't have that much blood family. So actually, I don't have that many blood relatives, because my father was Polish and he lost his family in the Second World War. So he had very few relatives, and my mother was an only child. So she had no siblings. I had a brother who lived in the United States, in New Jersey, Rebecca, so not very close to you. And he also passed away. So I got very few blood relatives. But don't feel sorry for me, because when you are living like I've been doing, you have the privilege of having so many wonderful friends. And I think I've had the privilege of actually finding the community that I was looking for. And I so strongly believe that friends are the family you choose. So I've got an extended family in all countries, which I think is such a gift. For me, it's such a gift of having such a big extended family in all countries in the world.
Well, I think, for me, Angelica, the inspiration around you is that I've experienced you as an incredibly heartfelt person who offers her heart in one of the most generous ways that I know. And so you've certainly are someone who is an inspiration in terms of having found your tribes, your people, the people who speak to your soul. And I think this is why I bring up the aloneness. I mean, just yesterday, I either heard or read something, I don't know if it was on the radio or I read it, around how so many people don't leave relationships. And I'm presuming in this context, they were probably talking about partner relationships, romantic relationships. But actually, relationships are relationships, either partner relationships, relationships with friends, relationships with family, or whatever, and they don't leave relationships for the fear of being alone. And so there is an aloneness and a standing alone, maybe, and it's not at all around a feeling sorry for you, because in many ways I'm also alone in the world. So it's not at all, and I don't feel sorry for myself around that. It's I believe we choose, we choose what it is we want in our lives. But just on the metaphoric sense of women standing up, well, particularly women, I mean, obviously also men, but knowing that they are held. And I know one of the big important things for you, which really touched my heart so deeply, was at a point where you said to me, Guiomar, we're never alone because we have each other as women. So perhaps you could speak a little bit to that and to your heart and to your connection with women and your sentiments around that.
Absolutely. And I think actually that we need actually to form the relationship so that we always have each other. I think I didn't understand that. I became a mother rather late in life. And so working in such a male environment, or being in such a male environment as I've been my whole life, I didn't realize that women need women. But I think that became so obvious to me when I became a mother, that women need other women. And we need to support each other. We need to be heartfelt to each other. We need to confide in each other. So to me, actually, this woman network is something that it's so important for me, even though my son is no longer small, so I don't need kind of to have other women for that. But I think it's so important that we support each other. And that is really building bridges also, because it doesn't matter. Age has got no importance. Whether we are mothers or not has got no importance. It's just that we have each other's backs.
That's beautiful. So on that note, I'm going to introduce Rebecca and Seya back into the conversation, and just to say that truly is such an inspiration, because that's my sentiment around the work I do as well, and that as women we need to learn to trust more. We've lost trust, and perhaps it's been through cultural, the way we've been brought up culturally, and the largely patriarchal world that we've been living into until now. But let's see how we can start refreshing those communities of belonging and of community and of connection, particularly across women and obviously across all humankind, men not excluded either. So Rebecca, Angelica, thank you. And I want to invite Rebecca and Seya back.
Thank you. I just want to find out from you, Angelica, since you are basically a global citizen, and some of us probably will never, get to experience that life on your level. I just want to just find out, do you think, in your opinion, that we as women are doing enough to take up the space in terms of, whether being in corporate, being recognized like our male counterparts? And if not, how do we change that narrative how do we take up space as women, and how do we, globally, because I'm sure the inequalities are everywhere, not only in Africa or South Africa, but they everywhere. And I feel you've experienced so much, so you might maybe have, how do we change the narrative?
I think that is a very good question, Seya. And you're quite right that this is not an African phenomenon. This is not an European phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon. That how can we as women take more place? And how, when a woman is coming up, it's like, oh, it's a woman. Oh, and everyone is looking around. It's still a very patriarchal society that we're living in globally. Doesn't matter whether we are on the US continent or the African continent or in Europe. It's a very male kind of environment out there. What I'm seeing, which is making me very happy, is that this is starting to change. I think actually, I'm the same age as Rebecca, so I think actually we've raised our children extremely well because they are the ones that is taking over now. And there are so many intelligent, wonderful, absolutely talented, beautiful women out there that are starting actually to take their places. So I think society is changing, and I love it. I absolutely love it. What we can do, that's also a very important question. What can we do actually to take more place? And that is, as you are saying too, we need to educate ourselves. We need to raise our voices, because it's so easy to be quiet. It's easier to be quiet than to raise your voice, because people can actually select whether they want to listen to you or whether they want to ignore you. And when you get ignored, that's an awful feeling. Then actually you get scared again, which is yet another very dangerous and unpleasant feeling. So it's a question of being brave.
And Angelica, I might hazard also that sometimes, well, certainly my experience at the moment is also one of also being quiet and not getting caught up in the chaos or in situations that don't resonate on my particular level or whatever. So I'm hearing from you from an industry and work perspective that we need to speak up. But there's also power in silence as well, and just getting on with the job of doing what speaks to our hearts and to our souls and getting on with that, because there's always a way.
That's a wonderful remark, Guiomar. And to be quiet is also very, very powerful. You're absolutely right. It's difficult to be quiet when you're young. I must admit that it took me many years to actually be more silent.
And I think I'm coming from the perspective of not needing to justify ourselves. I certainly now keep quiet more in the sense of not giving justification for who I am or for why I respond, why I behave in the particular way that I do. Just saying, because that is what resonates and is true for me. And so that is the way that, I choose to respond. And you brought up earlier about how important it is to be active, to be conscious and actively choose what it is we want to be doing and the choices we want to be making, which is so important when we're stepping out of old paradigms and of old habits and of old ways of being, consciously choosing how we want to do things.
And I think that Guiomar touched on something very important there, that it's also a question of following our hearts. It's also a question of finding your calling. That's a very difficult thing, finding actually your purpose, why we are here on earth. Why did God, if you believe in God, why did God put you, Seya, into the world? Why did he put me into the world? And follow your heart and follow your calling there, so that you live truly. Then people will listen to you as well.
Beautiful. And so I'm just going to invite Rebecca to come in.
Yes, Angelica, thank you so much. It's fascinating to hear about your choosing to have a lifetime like this, where you are untethered, in the sense that it gives you the freedom and flexibility to experience so much of the world, to bring your heart to plant seeds all over the planet at a time like this. But you mentioned the word bravery, that quality, and so I don't know. This probably is a bit of a two-faceted question. Trying to sort of consolidate my thought process here. But I know that when there are women who are pioneers stepping into male arenas, it does take a bravery, number one, to do that, to go into those places. Goes back to the word alone, because a lot of times you're the only woman in that
Yeah.
environment. But I noticed that when there's real power in a woman doing this is when she doesn't compromise being a woman
Yeah.
in that environment, and she brings the womanness into that arena. So that is a part of my question to you, is how you felt. Did you feel that you had to compromise yourself as a woman to be in that environment, or did you, as time went on, did you, especially after that mother, becoming a mother was such a transition for you, did that shape what you brought to the table at that, in that arena? And the second facet to that is that as you found the importance of connecting with women and having that, how did you go about making those connections in your non-professional life? Because you're going to all these different places, and I have a sense that I don't know exactly what your profession and your career was, but it feels demanding. And so how you juggle your time in order to develop and nurture those relationships. So it's a little bit of a two-faceted thing.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's actually, you reflected on the absolute correct things. I think actually I got promoted to the position. It's a lot about my work life because it should be more about the heart. But I think actually I got promoted because it was in fashion to promote women at that point in time. So I never had to compromise actually on being a woman, even though I've stepped into the most kind of underground mines, the most dirty, the most actually awful circumstances with men only. So I never had to compromise. I don't know if I've been naive. I've been reflecting on the same as you. I wonder sometimes if I was naive, if I didn't understand. But I never compromised, and hopefully I never actually compromised and became a man or acted like a man in any circumstances. I've been super lucky because when my son was born, yes, that was a big thing for me. And when he was born, I was lucky then to come to South Africa when he was very small. And South Africa is a very allowing community. And South African men at that point, 23 years ago, they didn't talk to women. They talked to me at the workplace, but it took actually a while before they started to talk to me. But after a while, they accepted that there was a woman in that position and I was their boss. So if they didn't talk to their boss, bad luck for them. But privately, men and women sat separately at parties in South Africa at that point in time. It's changed quite a lot there as well now, thank goodness. So I was always sitting with the women, and they were so lovely, and they were so allowing, and they were so fantastic. So that's how I got all my kind of women friends that are still actually in my heart and that I still know so well. And I wouldn't have made it without them, because you're quite right. I've had demanding positions and so on. And I have, from a very early age of my son, I've been a single mom on top. So I actually had to leave him, and my friends were always there. to look after him, or to kind of, so we could always make arrangements. My mother actually came from Sweden sometimes to look after him as well. But otherwise, we could always make a plan, because they were so supportive, and I'm still so grateful for that.
Angelica, you've said a lot there, and interesting that coming to South Africa, your sense of men and women are very much socializing separately. It's not something actually that has stood out for me in a big way, having lived in South Africa all my life, but it just goes to show, coming from another place, from an outsider's, at the time you arrived, point of view, but also how that actually enhanced something for you in terms of your connectedness with women, which is very beautiful. So just holding awareness of the time, one of the things I was going to say at the beginning, and which I like to say, is that in these conversations, we're always going to feel like there's more we want to talk about, and that the time would fly very quickly, as it has. But for now, I just want to say, Seya and Rebecca, if you've got any closing remarks for Angelica, anything you'd like to say in closing about your experience of the conversation today, and then I'll go ahead and make the closing comments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Angelica. What you shared was it shows how diverse we are as women and as people, and how we can all live different lives and still connect, in some way or form, and how you also have formed connections with people that are not even your blood. So that is, quite interesting for me. And as somebody that is still, growing, I'm only 35 now. I'm learning a lot from women like you and, Guiomar and Rebecca as well, that I also got to know. And so I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Seya. Thank you.
Yes, I find your adventure, your life adventures, very inspiring, uplifting. It's an honor to be sharing womanhood with you, and hearing how you've really been able to connect with your soul family in this lifetime, and to find connectionality and inspiration from that, instead of a loss, as you said, for not having the biological family. I know relationships within the heart are always very strong and essential. So I thank you so much for sharing. It's now you're in my heart, as is Seya.
Likewise.
And it's just fun to have another awareness of a dynamic woman making a beautiful difference. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I would love to learn more and connect with you again.
Thanks, Rebecca. And likewise.
I've got a niece living in Stockholm. She's quite a traveler, living in Denmark and Sweden and Finland and all over. So
wonderful.
Anyway, another woman who's traveling.
If she wants to meet up, we can actually make contact, you and I can invite her to some nice places.
Oh, she would probably very much enjoy that. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Rebecca, I'm glad you brought that up, because the idea of these conversations is that we also create another network, another resource. And that is my passion, my dream through these conversations. I was saying to Angelica just recently that, it feels like very slow, but I think things are we'll get there. I know, for example, the planet Uranus is a very slow planet. It's one of the outer planets of our solar system. And I know an astrologer that, Rebecca, you follow as well as I do, often says that the outer planets will ultimately win. So even if things feel like they're slow and they're tough and they're grinding and the wheels are taking a long time to turn, they are turning and things are changing. So And I just on just a final note to Angelica for myself. Angelica, I think what the beauty for me of your particular soul, your particular life, your journey, is this thing of, that you speak of. You keep on creating, in a way, new beginnings and starting new things, and just moving countries. I can't imagine myself, having lived in South Africa all my life, how that must be, but I've certainly had some reflections around that since you and I started these conversations, and I hope it brings up thoughts for Rebecca and Seya as well. I've been traveling quite a lot lately myself, and getting more and more into traveling, and I'm finding that somehow it's supporting me in opening more to the world and my spirit to the world, and realizing that we're not only connected to the physical ground on which we find ourselves, but there is another level on which we find connection to. And the more we open our hearts, the more we open into that interconnectivity. And it is tough. And I really acknowledge you, Angelica, for the tough life in many ways. And I know it's been, very, very rewarding on so many levels. But I sense you as a groundbreaker, to having chosen the path of a groundbreaker. And breaking new ground is not an easy thing. Really, the word that has come up is tough. And so you're an inspiration to all of us, and I'm sure to many others, to many other women, around how being okay, learning to be resilient, learning to realize that you will find your place wherever you go, even if you let go of things and people and circumstances. Let go of what is holding you back. Let go, and you will find new community that will be willing to, and new communities that are willing to open their hearts to you. So thank you for opening your heart to us today.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you want to say anything before I finally close.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much, Seya and Rebecca, for listening. Guiomar has listened now so patiently in another session yet. But I think it sounds like I've just been moving around. I think what I'm mostly proud of in this, and where I feel I lived my purpose in the world, is that I've built the bridges between the cultures. I've actually had I had the opportunity to meet so many people. And these people, they have met each other as well, like we are doing now, in the same way as you are building bridges, Guiomar. I think I've also built bridges between countries and cultures, and nationalities and languages. And I think that is actually what I'm taking with from my journey.
And hats off to you, Angelica, on that front. I know you've mentioned that before to me, that you have set up, and you didn't use these words, but I will, some truly inspiring enterprises, and set the wheels in motion for some really transformational stuff, and that you do, and you should take pride in the fact that those people and those connections are still going strong, which goes to say something about the foundational work that you did that you've done in creating new connections and bridges and networks. So thank you. And yeah, goodbye to everyone.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much.